we've been exploring stress, we've been exploring, what triggers us, we've been exploring centering as an antidote for the distress response. Lots of ways to do that. One way is throwing things at each other, doing sort of non-injurious pain, doing tissue throwing. That's great, good way to learn. The most stressful thing for other human beings, though, generally, unless you're in Ukraine or something, generally is other human beings. Okay? So if you hear what most people complain about, what most people are upset about, what most people are longing for, it's usually some kind of relational dynamics. We are, even if you're very introverted, we are relational creatures. We are social relational creatures. As a coach, those of you who are therapists will also benefit from this. It's really worth studying those. One way we explore these in embodiment is that we deliberately set them up in physical situations. That's a lot juicier than just talking about it. You can say, oh, I have issues with abandonment or something like that. You're just talking about the thing. But by enacting it, by putting people in a representation, because we're meaning-based creatures, it brings it to life. Why would you want to do that? To see patterns and work on patterns. Okay, they're the two things. So awareness and choice, same basic stuff we always study. In a centering context, it's to create awareness about relational dynamics that are difficult, upsetting, triggering, in the sort of loose sense of the word, things that we can study. This is actually kind of difficult for me. That's interesting. I want to study that. And then to learn centering, to learn to regulate ourselves in a format that's non-consequential, that we're not, actually with our partner that we've known for years, or our mother that we've known since we were born. Yeah. So it creates a container where we can study these relational patterns and learn to work with the stresses that come up in relationships. Right? A few years ago, we started looking at this, and about 10 now. One of the things we realized is there's not actually that many relational patterns. Okay, so Emily, can I borrow you for this? So we have two human beings here. What are the ways they can relate? So I'll just give you an example. Being seen, okay, so being present, we were just playing with that, and being ignored. That's a basic polarity. I immediately have a slight stress response doing that because it doesn't feel kind, even though we've set this up as an exercise, I've talked it through. Even though logically my neocortex is saying, Emily knows what's going to happen, we'll talk this through, she's done it with me before, there's consent, blah, blah, blah. The animal, emotional, historical, embodied part of me goes, that's not very nice, because I'm not a psychopath. Emily, how is that for you?
Here.
So like a tightening. Yeah, so a little bit of tightening. Your mouth? Yeah, she sort of tightened her smile a little bit. Yeah, I call that the I'm not getting laid tonight smile. That's nice. Not with Emily, just to be clear, married woman. But there's a different smile that's like a stressed smile or a slightly like angry smile. Yeah, just very subtle, but I noticed that in her. She might have noticed her breathing change slightly as well. Came up in your chest? Yeah, okay. So even though we're just enacting this, as it were, we're just doing it, you might think, but she knows it's not real. This is the perfect place to study it, because if her husband or son ignored her, it would probably be way too triggering. This real life, this speed, this consequences, all that happening. So now she can actually study this stress pattern. By the way, this is a basic human one, and we could turn it into, abandonment, right? And how's that? What did you do in your body?
A drop.
A drop. Okay, so that could be like despair, sadness. We could do a whole coaching session on where that shows up in her life, how she works with that, yeah? And then we could do centering to minimize that response. Because if you're a human being, people will leave you. Anyone notice this? You want the good news? Everyone you love will die or leave you. Or you'll die or leave them. Like, that is it as the human condition. So we better fucking get used to this, better we? We better get better at working with this sadness, not ignoring it, not pretending it doesn't exist, but noticing it, what it's like to be left. Anyone been dumped at some point in their life? Do you remember being like 16 and the first time someone broke up with you? You're like, yeah? Hopefully you've got a bit better at working with it than that when you're 16. Now it's like sad, but it's not quite as bad, hopefully. Anyone got teenagers who are just going through their first relationship breakups? Not a lot of fun for the poor darlings, is it? It's really tough on them. It's the end of the world. Yeah. Okay, so that's a basic relational dynamic. One is being ignored or being left, even more. Another one with just being witnessed, and this is way more important than people think. Particularly if we were to witness her in a particular embodiment. So we have a system called Embodied Toolkit that has 26 poses. We're going to use one you'll know or probably have seen before from yoga. They're from all different sources. It's one thing to be seen as Emily. How is it for Emily to be seen as a warrior? So let's do a warrior 2, if you wouldn't mind, Emily. Emily teaches yoga, so really straightforward for her. Now, I can just witness her, and I'm trying to sort of be fairly not trying to correct or judge. It's just a sort of pure witnessing. Yeah. I remember once I was teaching a yoga class in Moscow, and as I walked around the group, they were doing Warrior 2, all these Russian women all started like smiling, and as soon as I turned my back, they stopped smiling. Right? It was clearly, we have a Russian student here who's laughing because there's a cultural pattern there, right? Like something about being seen by a man and how that is, and is it okay to be tough and a warrior, or is it not okay? So there's a big difference between her doing warrior on her own, and now she's still witness. Everyone else, stop looking at her, stop looking at her. Okay, so this is her in a sort of private mode, hand in front of the camera, right? Okay, and then her being witnessed by us, and something probably changes, and it might feel really nice, like I like being seen this way. A lot of guys like to be seen as tough, I'm a warrior, I'm tough, or it might be I'm not allowed to be seen this way, or it's dangerous for me to be seen this way. Okay, now this is very different than if we were doing, can you do sensuality pose if you're happy to? So, in a way, because the camera's on, she's always being witnessed as well, right? So she'd have to do this in the privacy. You happy to do it or not? Yeah? Yeah? Great, I just want to check in with consent because it's quite a personal one. So sensuality pose, and for a man, sometimes it looks, I feel kind of French or Italian when I do this. I'm like, hey, it's your bed, Like, being witnessed in this might bring up a lot for someone. Just being witnessed. It might be a safety thing. It might be like, this is how I get attention and love. It might be, I'm so sick of being seen this way. It might be, oh my God, I love being seen like this. And anything, some of you are like dying inside now. Some of you are like, I wish it was my turn. Yeah. So just witnessing the witnessing, you have a sense of it. Yeah. How's that for you, Emily?
It's beginning to become uncomfortable.
Okay, you can just have it a shake, get out of it. And do you see how we'd use centering there, right? We'd say, listen, if you are married, in her case, or seeking a partner in someone else's case, it's useful to be seen in a sensual way, at least at times, right? So if you have a tolerance for that, that might be tricky. And there might be very, very good reasons, historically, familiarly, culturally, why that is or isn't allowed. But if you can't be seen in that, you've just limited a part of yourself. And it might be as a gay man, it might be as a Russian, as a whatever, right? There's different things that are involved in this, as always is the case with embodiment. So literally all we're doing is playing with being witnessed. Yeah, I've been on camera for the last 10 years on YouTube, and I've had to get really used to being witnessed in a lot of different embodiments, because as soon as that camera's on, it's different than doing it at home. You see this like yoga at home, yoga on camera. There'll be some performative aspect, right? So performative is what happens when we're witnessed, yeah? And it could be, right from trauma to I'm just kind of enjoying this to this is my favorite thing. Yeah. Okay, so one basic relationship between human beings is seen, not seen, and there's variations of that, okay? That was just 2 embodiments. We could go through another 24, but that would take a long time. What other ways can human beings relate? Like fundamentally, other than just seen, unseen? Well, yep, we're not so much covering language because it's embodiment. That's on top. I always say language is always on top of embodiment, but more fun, not how they relate like on the telephone or something like that, but what are the fundamental dynamics between 2 human beings? Okay, so again, touch is a way they could relate. Conflict, or what's the opposite of that? Okay, yeah, so we could say connected, disconnected. We were kind of doing that before. Conflict, another we could say, or supported. Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind doing warrior pose again, we lined up in the right place. Yeah, this way. Yeah, we can do it this way. Great. Is it okay if I support your arms, Emily? Yeah, you can do this from the front. Some people like that. Which do you prefer, front or behind?
Behind.
Right, yeah. Some people don't like behind. Some people find it just easier. Yeah. So one dynamic is support. Okay, and something I would notice, for example, is some clients will really give their weight. Give your weight. Yeah, my biceps can handle it. And other clients don't give their weight. I'm a strong, independent Dutch woman, and I don't need support from no man ever. Try that. Okay, so like, I'm not really supporting her. See what I mean? And even in the supporter role, you'll see a few dynamics. One is like, are you okay? Yeah. And another one is, I've got you. It's more control than support, right? Some yoga teachers are like that, aren't they? You know what I mean? They're quite controlling, not really supportive. And we could do a whole coaching session from here. Yeah, how is it? And we could be doing this in sensuality pose or authority pose or anything else. So we're just giving one example because it's a familiar pose for most people. And I might ask Emily, how is it to be supported?
It feels good.
Feels good. Okay, she's a busy mum, working mum. She probably needs a bit more support in her life, don't we all? It might just feel really nice. And that's also with me at this time, in this place, etc., right? So, but we will see patterns. I've done this for people and they've immediately started crying. Just immediately in tears, even quite skeptical people. Yeah? Okay, so that's supported. I'm going to take my hands away. Mm-hmm. And again, now she's not supported. And she might have an emotional reaction to that. It can be like, oh, or it can be like, yes, I'm on my own again. I knew it. You can't trust anyone. It can be a whole thing that comes up. Anything in that, Emily?
A familiarity.
A familiarity, right. So she's smiling and joking, but please don't laugh. There's also real things that come up with people, and it's way more powerful than just talking about it. There's something in the physical enactment that the emotions, the insights, both here and here, come out. Yeah? Okay. So we've got supported, unsupported. There's one more. You want to swap sides if you want, just to loosen it up. Yeah. So let's do the same pose again if you're happy to on the other side. Just antagonized. Is that okay if I give you a little poke and a prod?
You may.
Okay, so we've got the opposite of supported. You were kind of playing with this yesterday. Is how is it to be, this is technically known as fucking with someone. Okay. So does that feel familiar, unfamiliar?
Familiar.
Familiar. Okay, and we could say who's doing that in your life. Let's not name names, it's on camera. Okay, and then again, we could practice centering. Some people would need to practice, thank you, some people would need to practice centering to receive support. Who here thinks they're not so good at receiving support? They struggle with that, yeah? Emily's guilty, as charged, yeah? You know, right? But how do you practice that? This is how, right? You get someone to hold you. You could just be a hand on the back. There's many forms depending on the client and the situation. Who here is pretty good at giving support? Okay. Who here needs to practice giving support? Some people, yeah? No one wants to admit that one? Good. Who here finds it difficult when someone's messing with them, antagonizing them? Okay, so you could practice centering around that. Who here naturally antagonizes people? I'm known as a bit of a provocateur. I think, Sarah, you have that? Yeah, yeah. So again, you could notice the joy that comes up with doing that, right? Might be a bit too much glee. You see how this works? All right. So that's another dynamic. I've got a couple more. There's not actually infinite dynamics between human beings. There's not a million, actually. Okay, so seen, ignored, supported, antagonized. Loved, judged, that might be another one. It's a bit more than just being witnessed, but actually actively. It's kind of support in a different way. Judged, we often sort of have this position, kind of create a judgmental embodiment. It might be like judging her in her sensuality. That would be quite an intense dynamic to play with, judging her for being tough and a warrior. Lead and follow, so different ways different ways we work with this. Can we do this one? We could do like this, yeah. So she's in a more leadership position here, okay. I could also follow like this way by being slightly behind her. Be another way to sort of play with it, yeah. Or I could do kind of more this way, yeah. And she might like that, she might not like that, yeah. And I could do this way. And she might notice, does that feel more familiar, or does that feel more familiar? Which feels more familiar?
That one.
Yeah, and that's because I've been her teacher for a long time as well, so it's probably with me particularly that's going to come out. If we got someone else then it might be different, yeah? So you see how we can play with some leader-follower. You could say dominant, submissive, if that doesn't sound too kinky, yeah? There's different ways of framing these things. Joined and left, so again, that's like joining in and then leaving again. Yeah. Okay. So there are a few others. Any other relational dynamics that you want to explore as coaches, therapists, at all? Sometimes we have to create a new one, but this will cover a lot. Any others we normally play with? Yes and no. Boundaried, unboundaried.
Meeting. Oh, joining.
Yeah, joining is another version of meeting. They're the main ones, aren't they? Yeah. You'll see me on the different 1-minute coaching videos on Instagram and stuff where I just create them in the moment as well. So if something new comes up, I just create it. Yeah, like it's different. She might say, I feel pulled back. So do warrior pose. And it's like, okay, I'm going to hold her back. Yeah, we actually create the dynamic. Yeah, we feel pulled in two directions. So, okay, I'm here and the partner's over there pulling her the other way. Okay, so you can be creative with it. So Any others that you're thinking of you'd like to see demonstrated, or think of any relational problem that human beings have? Codependency. Okay, so what would that look like? So that would be, oh yeah, we could do like a warrior, but like leaning on each other. So do a warrior. It's going to feel weird, and kind of lean into me, and I'll lean into you. That's horrible, isn't it? It's not our thing. It's not our problem. So it took us a minute, but yeah. So that could be a way of playing with codependency. Yeah, nice. Another one. Oh, well, there's interdependence and independence. So you could work with those three. Yeah. Cool. So interdependence is like together, but not leaning on each other, and then independent is like you're doing warrior, I'm doing warrior, like in different directions. You know, some marriages are like that, right? They're in the same house, but they're not really a team. Just I'm going this way, you're going that way, kind of thing, right? Anyone's relationship feel that way? That's very different than we're aligned and we're maybe mutually supportive. You know, there's some sort of sense of going in the same direction, mutually supportive, but we're not. Yeah. No. Notice your emotional responses, right? Your heart just opens immediately, like. Whereas the others, you're like, ugh. Yeah, and this is depending on your own resonance. Some of you are like, oh, I wish my marriage was like that, and they feel sad. And other people, you'll see it and you'll go, yeah, my marriage is like that. That's great. It's nice to see. Yeah. So you'll also notice your longing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we have antagonism. We have our stress response to something. Someone who's very independent, like someone who's got an attachment style that's very avoidant, is going to feel like just doing this one, they're going to feel that's too much. It's going to be stressful. Yeah. So what's stressful, but also what you're longing for. Both of those are off-center. So we talk about fight or flight, but in Buddhism they talk about grasping as well as aversion, which is fight or flight. We're going to actually, that's kind of next before lunch. I've got that coming up. So you'll feel the longing, which can be healthy, and then it can be really off-centered. Oh my God, I want that so much. Yeah. Any other relational dynamics? Do you see how there's not infinite, right? There's only so many. When two human beings meet in the street, hello, Emily, how are you? I can be messing with her. I can be, oh, do you need anything? I can be supporting her. I can be just listening and witnessing. I could be like, yeah, let's go get cakes. I could be like joining her. Yeah, I could be following her. Where do you want to go? You want to go to a movie? Oh, okay. That's just what human beings do, right? There's not many more. I think there's probably another pair I'm forgetting that's in my book, but I didn't bring it with me today. It's another book. So, any other things you deal with clients, with relational things? I mean, there's other ways. Like sometimes we use this model a lot. Yeah. So here we could have dominated, leader, follower. Yeah. Here. Controlled. How is it to be controlled? Sleazy finger. We haven't done that. I don't want to do that one.
You can.
Yeah. So this is sleazy finger. Okay. Just make sure the angle's right. So, this one's going to sound a bit taboo, and some of the therapists might be in the angry comments on YouTube with this one. You can choose to make your dynamic flatter or spicier. Okay, what do I mean by spicy? More sensual, sexual, but it doesn't have to be a problem. Like I can flirt with a gay man with zero intent of there ever being any sex. Okay, or I love flirting with like little old ladies because you can't get cancelled for that. Yeah, and they know that you're not really trying to have sex with them, and everyone's having a nice time, but it's spicy. Does that make sense? Yeah. So there's absolutely no reason you can't, do a warrior that's sort of like, yeah. You can do it like, can I spice it up a little bit? Like, she's married, but it's like there's a little bit of spice. And there might be an ethical limit for that with a client. Obviously, consent's important here. Relationships super important. Context is super important. But how do you work with that dynamic if you what most therapists do are like, sex is bad, we don't do sex. Yeah? And it's like, well, yeah, obviously ethical behavior with your clients, but don't deny that that is a dynamic that can exist between people. And if we're not working with it ever, then no one's going to have any skill with it. If we just make it this taboo, it just comes out sideways. Yeah? So I flirt with audiences all the time when I teach. It's not a problem. Just put a little bit of pepper on that dish, You know what I mean? Yeah. All right. Some of you are, oh yeah. Used to live in Brazil. They know what I mean. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So let's have a chance to practice. Find a partner, someone you're comfortable with. Pick any of those dynamics. So it can be turning away, leaving someone, joining someone, leading, following, any dynamics. I think, let's do that today. So just make sure you and your partner both agree and you both agree to what's happening. Right. Thank you. Thanks, Emily.